Don't Starve Together has been out for quite some time, and while public servers aren't exactly the most popular way to play the game, they still have a player base. When playing with randoms on these public servers, whether it be a Clay official server or an unofficial server, there's usually only a few official rules. Maybe more if you're on an unofficial server, ironically. But what about unwritten rules? Well, every game has them, and Don't Starve Together is no exception. These are things that have been silently agreed on as rules by the player base. And today, I'm going to list off all of those unwritten rules that I could find, and we're going to talk a little bit about them. Alright, let's go. Starting with the biggest unwritten rule of them all. If you're leaving a server and you don't plan on returning anytime soon, just drop all of your stuff at base. This one is one that I surprisingly see a lot of players ignore, and it can be a huge problem for the longevity of a public server altogether. Yes, some important items will drop automatically upon logging out, like the eye bone or the terrarium, but there's actually a lot of items that can be lost forever if someone chooses to simply vanish. Now, look, this rule isn't stating that you should drop your items every single time you leave the server. Then there's a very good chance you'll have nothing when you log back in, but if you know you won't be back, or if you have items that are important for progression, try not to accidentally, delete them by leaving forever. Unwritten rule number 2 is one that I genuinely hope gets fixed by some type of optimization update, or with his skill tree maybe. But if you ever plan on playing on a public server, it's best to never pick Weber. Yes, that's right, Weber is the new Willow when it comes to being hated by every other player on the server. This is for 2 reasons. The biggest reason is that to fully utilize your favorite spider boy, well, you must use spiders. But on public servers, spiders are essentially a lag machine. You see, spiders are a special type of entity, and for some reason, Clay decided that they should always be scanning for food. If you know anything about computational stuff, entities who are constantly checking stuff tend to be the largest source of lag for a server. Pathing is one thing that causes lag, but the fact that spiders constantly check for food just adds a whole extra layer of lag. Depending on how many players are on your server, this lag can be experienced with merely 15 to 20 spiders, and if you're a Weber main, you'll know that's not enough. But the other problem Weber also suffers from when it comes to public servers is that he's quite literally the only character who cannot benefit anyone else. Living among spiders is possible thanks to den decorations, but if one spider takes damage, this decoration is instantly removed, and suddenly it's no longer habitable for other characters. Weber players also can be stereotyped as griefers because a popular griefing method includes simply logging out at base with a spider army. This instantly causes the spiders to become wild and attack any players at base, so don't be surprised if you're vote kicked from a server the next time you pick Weber. It's not your fault. Clay has just put this poor spider boy in a really bad spot multiplayer wise. This shouldn't of course stop you from playing as him solo though, he's still very fun as a solo character. Or I guess an all Weber playthrough would be fun, but that would get a little laggy. Unwritten rule number 3 is to always roll for boss drops between those of you who were a part of the boss battle. Look, I get it. Everyone wants that eye mask or that bee queen crown, but the unfortunate truth is, despite Clay advertising this game as a multiplayer game, the drops are more catered to solo players. As in, bosses will only drop enough loot for one player most of the time. Sure, if you're playing with your friends, you could all choose who gets what ahead of time, but with randoms in a public server, things can get pretty heated really fast. So, what better way to fix this issue than gambling? Yes, if you type /roll, you'll actually announce a random number between 1 and 100, and what many players will do is roll to see who gets the highest number, and therefore who gets the loot. Oh yeah, and I want to add that there's one exception to this rule. If you have a WX main on your server, maybe just, give them the Deerclops eye. It will help them survive spring a whole lot better than any other characters, so, just think about the poor WX mains out there, man. Moving on to unwritten rule number 4. Don't steal food from the pot. This one is one that I see a lot of players break, whether unknowingly or knowingly. You've got people who are kind of rude. If you see someone making food in a crock pot, 9 times out of 10, that food wasn't meant for you. There are rare cases where you'll have someone who doesn't mind being the base chef, but usually those meatballs you snagged from that crock pot that you didn't make weren't made for you. And I mean, it never really hurts to like press T to chat or whatever your button is and ask. The only time this rule should be broken is if you're actively starving because, you know, an alive teammate is better than dead. But still, come on, man, it's not that hard. Just get some meat and some filler and make your own food. Or if you're playing as Wirt, I don't know, eat some veggies or something. You know, staying on the topic of kitchens and fridges, unwritten rule number 5 happens to deal with our favorite mischievous imp friend, Wartox. And that is, if you're playing as Wartox, try your best to not rely on mortal food. I would hope most Wartox mains know this, but Wartox actually gets a 50% reduced effectiveness penalty from food. This includes hunger. So for example, those meatballs that could have given a normal character 62.5 hunger will only give Wartox 31.25 hunger. That is a whole lot less. However, Wartox has access to one of the easiest to farm food sources in the game, souls. And thanks to his relatively recent skill tree, wait, that was a year ago? Oh, crap. Whatever. He can now stockpile these souls way better than before with soul jars. So let's be honest, if you're eating out of the community fridge with a full stockpile of souls on you, well, I hope you picked naughty Wartox, because that's how you're acting. Funny joke. That's where you laugh, guys, okay? Alright, let's move back onto a very popular unwritten rule for number 6, and I'm sure every one of you have heard of this if you're an experienced player. And that's to not be a base Wilson. So what is being a base Wilson? Well, if a player joins and then immediately asks where base is, and then they proceed to AFK at base and drain resources while simultaneously not doing anything productive for the team, yeah, that's a base Wilson. And rule number 6 is don't do that. I get it, maybe you're new to the game and want to experience it in all of its multiplayer glory, but playing like this is not only incredibly boring, I mean seriously, is it fun to just like idle near the campfire? Come on, it's also harmful to the entire team. I don't know, I can't see it. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering a lot here, I'm kind of going off script, but it's just not a fun way to play the game. If you are new and you don't know what to do, I suggest you boot up the game in solo or with some friends before hopping into a public server. It's gonna be rough, but you can learn the basics. I believe in you. Now let's go on to the other side of the spectrum. Rule number 7 goes out to all of you experienced players out there, and that is to try to avoid speedrunning if the rest of the players are playing casually. Look, a majority of the player base, including those who play on public servers, tend to play the game far more casually. But all it takes is one highly skilled player to force a world into having rifts open and cause all of those casual players to be left completely behind, unsure of what to do next. While they're planning to fight Ancient Guardian, the speedrunner has already done that and is preparing for Ancient Fuel Weaver. You know, that type of stuff. And it's like, at that point, why even join a public server if you're planning on doing all of this alone? At least try to bring the other players along for the journey, or like ask them if they're cool with you rushing through stuff without them. It's just a common decency thing. Let's go back to a more generalized one that many people may already know. Rule number 8 is to not make beefalo extinct. Now this isn't saying that you can't go hunting every now and then, you know, boys gotta eat and all that. It's in the title of the game. However, if you aren't aware, beefalo must reproduce in order to survive and continue existing in a server. Now, they reproduce asexually, so you only need one to expand the population. Don't ask me how that works. But if every beefalo on the server is dead, then they will be effectively extinct for the duration of the server entirely. If you have any Windy, Maxwell, or even Wes friends on your server, or, well, they don't have to be friends, you're playing on a public server, but, you know, this may make them very angry. And in general, it's very bad etiquette for public servers, as beefalo are broken OP when tamed. You know, that fun stuff. Everybody loves beefalo. You also kind of need them for shadow pieces. I mean, I guess you don't need them, but like you really want them for shadow pieces. For unwritten rule number 9, not 5, I almost said 5, you have to subscribe to Polarlotus. Okay, fine, not a rule, but I really would appreciate it, guys. Come on, it's super cool. Okay, the actual rule number 9 is to not be stingy. Look, I get it. Maybe you are used to playing solo and grabbing every sapling, grass, flint, and rock you see and hoarding it until the end of time. But in a public server, that just doesn't work. Not only are you setting up new players to fail, but you're also gatekeeping a large portion of the game. Most of the time, you don't need a full stack of grass and twigs in your inventory. I know it sounds crazy, but remember that in a public server, you are trying to further yourselves as a team, not an individual. Give a little, and you might just get surprised on what you get back. That is, of course, unless you give stuff to them and they just leave the server forever without dropping any of it, but then they're just jerks. Now this next one might be a little hard for people to follow because, you can't exactly control it, but rule number 10 is to try not to stay dead, and this one won't take too much explaining. On a public server with default settings, player ghosts will create a global sanity drain, and at a pretty decent rate too. But some people, when they inevitably get, ghostified, they tend to just kind of either AFK or not even try to find other players for help. Yeah, don't be that guy. I mean, sure, if your team is fully comprised of Maxwell, Windy, or Walter mains, then maybe this rule isn't as important since they don't suffer from the ghost penalty, but otherwise just press your chat button and ask for help. Or if you're gonna AFK, at least AFK in base, so somebody can easily see you and revive you when they can. Remember, most of the time you being a ghost means you're being not useful to the team. This next rule goes out to all of you Wickerbottom mains out there. And it's one that I'm sure the Wormwood mains, or really anybody who plants crops for giants, will be thankful that I'm spreading around. If you see a large farm plot, specifically ones with non-random seeds, please don't use your applied horticulture book on them. Wickerbottom's horticulture books are great, especially for early game, but they force all crops that are grown by them to not be giant. Now look, we all know that giants are optional content, but everybody loves to see those giant plots grow and flourish. So, yeah, I know you're trying to be helpful with your horticulture book, but it never hurts to ask. Just ask them before you use your book, especially if you didn't plant the farm. Alright, I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys, this next one is kind of a curveball. All of the previous ones were nice. However, this one is a bit cruel. Don't die unless you are prepared to have your stuff stolen. Now, as much as I would love to say that rule number 13 was to not steal people's loot, that just isn't the case within the greater part of the community. I've hosted tons of servers, played on a good handful of public servers, and almost everyone will pick your body clean like a vulture if they see you croak near them. So sadly, make it your life's goal to stay as healthy as possible, or you might just start back at square one. Like I said, these unwritten rules are based on things that I've seen within my time in this community. I'm not happy about this one, and those few of you who are respectful about returning stuff when people die, I appreciate you more than you know, but it just is what it is. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there in the constant, I'm afraid. Now, if you want people to like you and you see a dead body, maybe try, asking and giving their stuff back. It would be pretty cool of you. But don't expect the same favor in return, sadly. I've seen way more people be vultures than friendly with this stuff. Now back on to one that is actually helpful for the server in its entirety. Number 14. If a boss happens to spawn near you, I'm talking destructive seasonal bosses like Deerclops or Bearger, don't bring them into base. Some players may not know any better, but if you don't know, let me make it clear right now. Both of these bosses are called base killers for a very good reason. And it doesn't matter if everyone on the server is at base, if you bring the bosses there, there is a very good chance that your base will be gone. If you are truly too scared to fight the boss all on your own, remember that you are faster than them, so run a little bit away and try to call for help using the chat feature before they catch up to you. Oh, and if your public server lasts until summer somehow, which is ridiculously rare, most of them die out before winter ends, remember that Antlion exists, and you need to leave when you see the ground shaking or a very similar fate will happen. Speaking of base, let's go back to base for this next one. Don't pick flowers near bee boxes. Everywhere else is fair game as they will regrow during rainfall, but any flowers near the bee box should always be strictly off limits. Not only do they just, look pretty there, each flower will increase the output of the bees when it comes to honey. So unless you want to be banned from the server's taffy eating competition, just leave them there. If you're really low on sanity, the taffy is better anyway, so yeah, just Don't worry about the flowers there. Just leave them. Sometimes you just gotta leave them, man. Now this next one is a bit of a general rule, but if you are new, ask people for help. The Don't Starve Together community, as brutal as it may seem, especially on the forums, is actually one of the kindest in-game communities I have seen. And I've been playing multiplayer games for well over a decade now. I'm talking, I started playing around the Xbox 360 Call of Duty lobbies era, so I know some mean communities. And Don't Starve Together is not one. So before you do something you don't know, ask the other players on your server, and chances are they will be happy to help you. Let's take a step back to another character-specific rule. If you happen to be a WX main, just because you can eat gears and they refill your stats pretty well, it does not mean that you have to hoard a stack of them or even eat them at all. Now, yes, gears aren't exactly hard to acquire by most players. A trip to the ruins can have you swarming with them. But the big problem is that gears, while they are technically renewable, are still pretty difficult to farm in mass. You have to either defeat Fuel Weaver, an endgame boss, to reset the ruins, mine clockwork statues during a full moon to summon clockworks, or pick through tumbleweeds for a few hours. None of which are entirely that fun. And WX, unlike Wartox, does not suffer a mortal food penalty. So maybe lay off the gears next time and opt for some meatballs or butter muffins. Back to general rules again, rule number 18 is to not dig up mushrooms. Almost every resource in this game is infinite due to world regrowth. Digging up those rabbit holes is totally fine, as they will pop up again during summer. Annoying, but ultimately fine. And trees and other natural resources will always regrow. This is essentially a failsafe if a world plunges into chaos to give new players at least somewhat of a chance to survive. However, there is one resource that does not apply this regrowth mechanic to itself: mushrooms. While it may seem appetizing to dig up that blue cap and receive 2 blue caps instead of 1 at any time of day, this is a huge mistake and is a very quick way to get yourself vote kicked from a server, because this will remove the mushroom from the world entirely. I mean, I guess if you have a wormwood who knows how to grow mushrooms, it's not all that bad, but it's still a very frowned upon action by a majority of the community. And look, as satisfying as it may be to make it to Rule 20, I really only have 19 unwritten rules to share today, and the last one is, well, just don't be a jerk. This covers pretty much everything, from the obvious one of don't burn people's bases down for no reason, to not being randomly toxic in chat, which may actually be a written rule, I don't know. I know you don't get, like, clay banned for griefing, but maybe they'll ban you if you get a little spicy in public chat, who knows. I'm not testing it because I actually like this game. Anyways, off topic. Yeah, this one is way more obvious, and more quote-unquote written than the others, especially on unofficial servers. But just be nice. At the end of the day, you are playing a non-competitive survival game. Hell, it even goes as far to say cooperative, so, well, be cooperative. If you want to get toxic, go play a shooter game like Overwatch or something. There's plenty of that there. Oh, here we go, Rule 20, alright, awesome. Yeah, if you're Wickerbottom, don't forget to, brush on the tentacle book and spam it in base. Everybody loves that.
How do you make it stop?
For legal reasons, that last rule was a joke. Okay, guys, please don't get mad at me.